Oh, we working. I cannot begin to overstate how excited I am about today's guest, Allison. She literally her wing on day one of my marketing career, and I've been under her wing since. So I'm super excited about being able to talk to her today. Super excited.
Oh, and we got the McDonald's family in the building. What's up?
What is up?
You are. I can't even begin to say how excited I am to have you. Obviously, I was explaining before you jumped on that you literally took me under your wing on day one, and I've been
Aw,
under there since. I really believe that you molded me into the marketer that I am today, because you literally on those 2 hour, 3 hour rides, we had some
man.
conversations. I had some notes and questions, and you thoroughly answered them. I would have questions where I'm like, yo, what about this? And you're like, no, don't ask that. Ask me that in the car. Or you'd be like, no, go ahead, ask that.
Right,
And
right.
just we developed a brother sister relationship. I got to scare you before some presentations, because I don't like practicing and you love to
Listen,
practice.
listen.
But
Whew.
just really, really happy to have you on. So for the people who don't know who you are, the unfortunate people who don't know who you are, who are about to be blessed, just tell them a little bit about your career in marketing, a little bit about your fitness journey, because I know when we were working together, you were starting to do a lot of different things for your health, just overall health,
Yes,
and then lastly, any entrepreneurship things you have going on.
absolutely. So, I mean, where I started from, let's see. I don't want to say it was a long time ago, but a little while ago, I started as an intern with the agency while I was in college. And it really began to just kind of start my passion towards marketing and communications. And then from there, I was able to get a job in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I was able to really work with a lot of the Southeast markets as it pertains to like retail brands and the food industry. And from there, I began to even further develop this passion for like multicultural marketing and really understanding the consumer. And that allowed me to obviously meet you, and we did a lot of work. And I'm sure we can dive into that later because
We will.
it was fun, but at least we forget it was indeed work.
It was a grind.
But that allowed me to look at opportunities in Chicago, where I currently reside with a multicultural agency, and now working at another general market agency in the pharmaceutical space. So that's really like the radio high string version of what I've done historically in my career. But honestly, it's just something I'm passionate about because I love people, and at the core of what marketing and communications is, it's understanding people and understanding what they need from us, how they consume from us, and then what we can do to meet to provide a solution to what their needs are. I think your second question was about fitness. So I am all about just total health. Like I always call it like 360 health, like being healthy physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and it is paramount, especially in these times. We're seeing where there are gaps in those places of being healthy.
Mhm.
But in order to maximize who we are, what we can be for others, we really have to put in place a wellness plan for ourselves. I know for me, in my head, health was always there, but I had some life events that I went through, and that really caused me to pause and say, hey, you need to take care of yourself physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, in all these areas so that you can be a person that can think clearly, that can offer assistance to others, and really maximize my time here,
Yeah.
on earth. We want to
Mhm.
maximize what we have, and you can't do that when you're not in a position of health. And
Amazing.
then finally, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, I'm gonna be honest. Like at first, I would always say, like, I'm not an entrepreneur because I never saw like I guess I put myself in this pocket. Are you gonna start
Mhm.
an agency? Are you gonna do this? And I was like,
Right.
no, I don't want to do that. Very happy with getting a check on the 15th and 30th. Thank you very much. But,
That's all
I
right.
realized that, entrepreneurial spirit is really seeing that, again, going back to, you'll probably see themes throughout our conversation tonight, but it's about having a passion for something, how can you provide a solution to a need? And so honestly, it started with doing events, and then I got a certification in event planning. I've done a bajillion different weddings and corporate events on my own. And then I also started a nonprofit, which in itself is an entrepreneurial form, but it's really about allowing people to learn how to dance in hard situations, or dancing in the rain, as we like to call it, which is Keep It Sharp Services. And then most recently this year, I launched a podcast called Page from My Book. Season 2 is coming out in a week, so that's exciting. But really learning that we all are brands, how we represent ourselves, what goes before us before we walk into a room, how we carry ourselves, the platforms that we choose to carry ourselves on, how we represent ourselves and put ourselves out there for the world to see is still strategic, whether we want to say it is or not. And so we are all our own brand, whether you want to call yourself an entrepreneur or not. But it's important that we understand that about ourselves so we can be more mindful of how we treat our brand. So I hope that answered all the questions.
That was perfect. That was perfect.
Okay, great.
True exemplification of Black excellence for sure. So with that said, you are and have specialized in branding and marketing, communications as well. And so let's get straight into marketing. What do you believe to be the state of marketing right now, and kind of the progress that you've seen over the last maybe 10 years, where it was, what's progressed, and kind of where it is now?
Absolutely. So that question can go down several roads, but to really hit it at a high note, here's what I'll say. When I first went into the industry 10 years ago, plus whatever, there were a lot of things that we just didn't see. I know personally, when we were developing budgets back in the day, social media was not a line item. Multicultural marketing was not a line item. We heavily leaned into our traditional platforms, television, radio, analog radio, with that. And there were moments for engagement. And to be clear, all those things are still important. However, we've now come into a space where we have to really meet the need of where people are. So we need to be where consumers are. Gone are the days where brands or accounts or agencies or marketing practitioners could push content onto people and say, we have what you want, you need to have this, and this is a really great product, whatever. Now, we've come into these new generations, Gen X, millennials, Gen Zers, where they're like, I don't need you to push content to me. When I want it, I will seek you out. What I want, I know where to look for, and I will look for it. Your job is to make yourselves available and solution oriented to what I need. And if you can provide what I need, I will come to you. So now they force us into a space where we don't get to choose the platforms we want to be on. Consumers tell us where you have to be on to be a player. It's now, where we currently are. So yeah, social media, if you're relevant, is absolutely a line item for brands. Multicultural marketing, that's a line item. Now, I will say sometimes when there are moments that get a little bit rough, those are sometimes the first line items to be scrubbed. But honestly, there's purpose and a reason why you need to continue to lead with ethnic insight as it pertains to your brand. And then additionally, things like TV, we just now call video, because we know we are consuming content from all areas. We have multiple screens, right? We got the TV on, our phone in our hand, a tablet going on, and we're just getting it all. So you just can't say, I'm going to buy here, because everything now is tailored, again, to the consumer. So depending on the show you watch, I am now strategically going to place an ad that's relevant to you. Because I know if you don't care about it, you're fast forwarding through it, or you're shutting down the electronic. So we have to find ways to fit in. I know a big thing for us, I don't know if you remember this, but I remember a little bit before 2010, maybe 2010 or 2011, we were buying ads in gaming because we knew it was a billion-dollar industry and growing. Yeah. And we were like, we need to be on the billboard in the NASCAR game because that's where our consumers are spending hours. That's right. So we're seeing a lot of out-the-box type of approaches and strategies to marketing. But again, it all boils back down to, are you where your target segment is? If you are not relevant, the answer is no, and you're not a valid and vital player in this space at that point.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I can't stop cheesing, man. You just bring it out. I'm telling you, you my favorite, man. So anyway, so with that said, when I came into McDonald's, one of the battles that we were fighting, or that you were fighting, I joined, was trying to make multicultural a real line item, and give the understanding of why it was so important to lead with ethnic insights. I mean, we've had that battle, and I think the thing that we hear most is, well, the general market creative and the general market tactics are what is going to still appeal to the African American, or is still going to be seen by the African American. Explain why that is not the case, and why ethnic marketing has to be a line item on people's budgets, and why we have to lead with those ethnic insights.
Yeah, ethnic insights is a greens fee into tapping into the general market. So let's just be really honest about that. Because we have clearly seen how the absence of understanding. Okay, so again, you're going to hear things. We talked about the consumer being at the forefront, and knowing that where we are currently in this country, the fact that politics are no longer off the table when it comes to marketing, understanding what the needs are for your consumer, which is a diverse consumer. We are not monolithic, holistically, like any of us.
Right.
And so understanding and leading with the multicultural consumer in mind is very paramount and is a priority, because we can look and see how culture is defined by certain ethnic segments. And so for you to omit them from the conversation and think you can just tell them what they look like, what their habits are, what they're going to do, is very prehistoric thinking, and it will show in your profitability. It will show in how consumers engage with you. Consumers are very, very smart. And I have to say this for people, especially who are marketing practitioners, because sometimes we get so caught up in our work and we forget that we're consumers too, that if you can't take off your hat and remember who you are as a consumer seeking out information and solutions, you are doing a grave disservice to yourself and your brand, because people have to see themselves reflected. At the core of it, we're humans. We want to be seen. We want to feel like we are a part of your conversation. We're a priority, and we want you to be authentic to us. So if you can't meet those needs by saying you're multicultural consumer, your ethnic consumer is a large part of culture, no matter what ethnicity, race, culture you identify with, it is. We know that.
100%.
That's another
well, real quick, because there was a slide that you had that I've remembered since the day I saw it, and it was that 73% of whites and 67% of Hispanics believe that African Americans shape mainstream culture or influence mainstream culture. And so that already shows why like brands like an Apple or Nike would lean into multicultural so heavily, because the other ethnicities are definitely captivated by our culture. And so it's important to include it. I think the last thing I'll say on that before throwing it back to you is that there's subtle differences between what is captivating and appealing to an African American than to somebody that's white. So, when we show, like, we went through the whole coffee thing. Well, we don't want to see your black coffee. Put as much cream and as much drizzle on your coffee as possible.
Caramel.
If you're interested in me, I need to see that. The other thing was, when you show us in an ad, don't show us as the server. Show us as the person sitting at the table. Show us as the person you want us to be. So that
show us as the owner, like we are.
Absolutely. So your thoughts on that? Go for it.
So, I mean, and you really said it. You gave those stats. I shared them on a slide. I know that slide has to be almost 8 to 9 years old. So we know that number is even more so now. But
Absolutely.
I mean, you hit the mark at the end of the day. So separating, like, really quick, just race, ethnicity, and culture. Even though there's a lot of tie between those three things, there's no doubt, though, that when you are looking at certain cultures, especially multicultural cultures, they do lead the forefront and have been identified from every other subgroup as the leading voice, the leading trend. They're looking to this culture to say, what's cool in music?
Yes.
what's cool in clothing, what's
Mm-hmm.
cool in food, to be completely honest. Um, and so, I mean, net, at the end of the day, to omit that voice, that targeted consumer, the ethnicity, that culture from the conversation, from the strategy, is it's a little bit deeper than a missed opportunity. You eliminated yourself from the game.
100%.
You eliminated yourself from the conversation, and you will see that affect. I mean, if we want to be business minded, you'll see that affect your bottom line, but even more so, you lose the organic engagement. And once you don't have that with your consumer, with that community, it's a wrap. And there's a lot to claw back to earn that trust back. Because, I mean, you know, there's a lot of buzzwords we can talk about in the industry, but brand trust is real. And when you lose that trust, much like a person, you know, losing it drops you to the bottom, you claw your way back. And there's not as much grace once you don't have it. So I think a big takeaway from this particular conversation is make sure you're cognizant of your segment. Make sure that voice of your targeted segment is in the picture when it comes to strategy, is in the picture when it comes to employment of who is creating these strategies, and at a higher level. I mean, not just, you know, on all, you know, because a part of, especially now, we're looking to see how well you are weaving in our voices into your brand, into your intentions, and that you're not just trying to consume from us, but contribute to us. And that is what we're looking for. And you don't want to miss that boat.
That's a clip right there. That's a clip. I'm gonna have to cut that one out. And Kristen's in here. She was a huge person. She was a huge part of the battle for getting all of this. So like the three of us, Deidre, like everybody who was a part of the team at that time. I mean, we all went to those BMOAs and to the regular co-op meetings, and we fought for this for years. And so just so happy to see her in here as well as somebody who really fought for all of this. So with that said, you talked a little bit about insights, and so just throwing it back to general insights and general data. How important is data in the way that you shape your strategies, your marketing strategies, whether it's for general consumer market or African American? Just overall, how do you use and leverage data, and is it important in the way you make decisions?
Yeah, so data and analytics are the bedrock of a strategy. You have to understand you need to understand where people, what their behavioral patterns are as far as how they consume, how they're living, what is their financial state historically, where do we project it going. All this type of analytics and data help us to build a strong plan around what the solution and need is and what it will be. And kind of going back a little bit to our previous conversations about brand trust and remaining authentic, we want to know that you have a plan that is not just happening for today, but what's the plan moving forward? How have you been interacting? You cannot, let me tell you something, if you, because and I say this because we talked a little bit about entrepreneurship and, you know, I think this industry can come off really, really sexy to people. Like, oh my gosh, it's so fun. And you add. And if you jump into that ring with no research being done, with no data to support your strategic insight and how you're approaching it, you'll find holes in what you're really able to come up with, because you'll have a very flat strategy at the end of the day. But more so, people can see right through that. Because again, they will not feel seen. Like, how are you gonna tell me to buy a $50 X, Y, and Z if we have the highest rates in unemployment?
That's right.
You're not making sense. You're not seeing me. You know, how are you gonna talk about, you know, how this will help my life and let me have fun and I should take this vacation here in a time when that's not where my budget has been for this particular target segment, and that's not, you know, where it's trending towards. So if you're not leveraging data and analytics, you're not efficient, and you won't be relevant, and therefore you won't come off authentic.
I love it. And I'm a very much a numbers person, a data guy, and so, you know, when we're in, just a little bit about how we use the data. So when we got to go in that room and we got to stand in that U shape that we all have to stand in, and we got these owner operators around the U shape. We got the presentation behind us. you know,
Yes.
when we're explaining the data and the analytics, like explain how helpful that is to get the room to buy in, especially in a multicultural world where we're like fighting, like we need this budget. This is going to be impactful. How does that data kind of help shape the room? Like, what does it do? Does it align everybody? Does it get the buy-in? Like, what do you believe the data does, like actually does in connecting the dots?
Sure. So I want to say, like, in this particular answer, I'm talking to Marcom practitioners, right? Because
Okay.
you're the one that's trying to sell in your point.
Yes.
So similarly, your client is kind of like your consumer, right? So now you are marketing to them. And it's understanding them as individuals. What is their objective? Because not everybody in the room has the same objective. I mean, granted, yes, profitability on the bottom line, cash flow, yes, high level, that is everybody's goal. But that looks different for each person. So as you get to learn who they are, what drives them, what are their concerns, what are the questions they're going to have, you meet that need ahead of time by collecting the data that's going to answer their questions. So, for example, when we would try to sell in a concept or a strategy, we knew what our end was. So we were like, this is our solution to our clients' needs. Now, in the business that we were in, we were talking to a room of like 40 people at one time, trying to get them to line up to this one solution, which in itself we know is not easy.
Yeah.
So we would have to say, okay, this person is a numbers person. So they want to know what promotion have we done similar to this and how did it perform?
Yeah.
This person wants to know, are we going to be effective in their community? So we need to look at these different segments, the Hispanic consumer, the African-American consumer, the boomer consumer, the millennial consumer, and say, this is how they've trended when we've talked to them. This is economically where they stand. So this will work for them. This will not work for them. Then we have to think about, there are some people who are like, well, what are competitors doing? So now we need to go pull competitive reports and say, your competitors have these promotions that are similar. They did not work this way. They will work this way. But data supports your argument, and it also calms the concerns that your consumer or client has. And that's also what you're doing externally when you're building a strategy for a brand to sell a product or a concept. It's what can we provide you to give you peace about what I'm asking you to engage with or purchase. So like right now I'm in the pharmaceutical space. And so, yeah, that's like me saying you need to take this medication. And then I put no important safety information. Like, just take it.
Trust me.
I can't do that. Right. People are like, well, what are the side effects? And has it performed well? Are people living healthy? They still got their fingernails. Like, these are things that they want to know. That's still data and analytics. So I need to provide that. I need to show, me having this athlete in this sports commercial is still data and analytics, because I'm to give you the highest performing player whose stats you already know, and I'm showing how this product continues to help them perform. But it's the assumption and the understanding that I know this player's stats. So yes, like it's very paramount. And creating a strategy and creating a concept and getting people to trust that you know what you're doing, because you provided the back work and the knowledge I need to say, okay, this works. Because one thing we have to remember too is a lot of it is trial. If I'm engaging with you for the first time and I'm bringing you my hard-earned time, my hard-earned money, how do I know that this will meet the need that I'm looking for? How do I know that this is effective, that this will work? How do I know that this won't damage my health? Whatever that is. But you providing those statistics, that data, that information to me allows me to make a fully informed decision, not just a fully risky, quick choice, but to say
and emotional,
absolutely.
Really.
Absolutely. So it allows me to feel a lot better with engaging with you as a brand.
I love it. I think that what data does for me, especially in those rooms, is it takes the emotion, it strips the emotion away, and it forces us to deal with logic. I mean, here's what the numbers say. Do you want to play to the numbers, or do you want to play to your emotions? Because when
Right.
you're in the rooms and with you in pharmaceuticals, it can be a food vendor, whoever it is, they may say, well, I don't feel like I got that many of those coupons in last time we ran that. And then I go to the numbers and I'm like, but you got a whole bunch, and I think
Right.
that that's the kind of stuff that just data does in that room. It really gives you a foundation to stand on, to lean on when you're trying to pitch your strategy. There were things that we had to do. I mean, if we were coming in with the product promo, we had to provide a break-even analysis. We had to let them know what we
Yes.
thought we could generate based on the discount and how many more transactions we would need to break even and then excel past that. For the people
Yes.
who were interested in, the fact that we wanted to connect with the community and understand why that was important, we had to let them know that 47% of African Americans want you to want brands they buy to support social causes. Well, that's important to them. I
Correct.
mean, damn near 50% of them want to see that from the brands they buy. And then competitive. I mean, what are people around you and in your industry doing? All those things are so important. And I think we're talking about being in the big U shape with 40, 50 franchisee owners of major corporate businesses. But for a small business and an entrepreneur, this information is still very much,
Absolutely.
needed to make
Absolutely.
decisions. And so
Right.
talk a little bit about the difference between corporate data and the data maybe a small business entrepreneur would need that they may have access to still to make some of their decisions. Do you think that there's some resources out there that they can still leverage and lean on to make smart decisions for their size business?
I mean, the short answer to that is yes. Information is out there. Google is your best friend. There is
Best
no
friend.
shortage of information. I charge people to really get out of a mindset of wanting people to give them the quick fix, the quick answer. There's no way around it. It's going to be hard work. You got to really get out there. Even if you have to interview subject matter experts on what you're, on whatever it is that you're trying to get information from a targeted consumer. Even if you have to get a whole bunch of people in a room and just have a conversation, you'd be remiss not to have some form of research. But I promise you, like whether you're a big global corporation or you got 3 people who are like, hey, I want to train with you, you still need to provide forms of data and analytics, and it's at your fingertips. So I don't want to belabor that point because I really want people to not be afraid to roll up their sleeves and figure it out. Like it's gonna take work, and you cannot strategy without data and analytics does not exist. So don't think of it as 2 separate things. You're building your strategy off the facts that you have from your consumer, from the industry, from the marketplace, from the economy. So they're hand in hand, and you need to address that as such. So definitely, it's not too much of a difference from an approach standpoint. Yeah, there might be more information and resources and tools you can use based off the size or your budget, but there's no lack of information or way to attain it.
I love it. I love it. And for me, just to mention some of the resources that we use in those rooms that some people still present to small businesses, Nielsen, Iconoculture, Mintel, some of the major ones, Google Analytics. I'm Google Analytics certified. Google Analytics certification is free. So for those people that want to do that, you can. You just have to spend the time to do it. And so, like you said, data and analytics, they're out here and they're available for people. And even those major players, Nielsen, Intel, they have free reports that people can pull from that are, they may be from 2019, but it can still shape a lot of the strategy that you take in the rest of 2020 and into 2021. The census, and don't forget to fill out your census if you haven't, because we as marketers need that.
Correct.
We as marketers need that.
I mean, again, as you said though, like everything that you named, Nielsen, all of those resources, they are on Google.
That's right.
Ambition and diligence is the key. It's a silver bullet. So, but first of all, I'm so proud of you for just still being certified for that. But yes, like. You want to make sure that you have that to support what it is that you're the solution that you're trying to push forth with your brand.
So let's talk about the elephant in the room. And I don't know that it's an elephant, but COVID and social injustice is where we're headed. We're going to address COVID first because I feel like that's going to be shorter, and then social injustice will round us out because we're both very much passionate about what that means and how that's really shaped how we have to adjust. But COVID came in around March, snuck on in around March, and just dismantled everything the way we know it. So
Yeah.
how, with your clients, with what you've seen on some of the brands that you've worked on, what are some of the adjustments that you've had to make or you've seen people make to COVID? And what of those adjustments do you think are going to continue through even past the COVID world and into our new normal?
Yeah, the great question. The thing that comes to mind first, and really just foremost, is the ability to go virtual. I think since March, since we've been most impacted from a quarantining perspective, you really saw a line of delineation between organizations and brands that were ready to go virtual and those who were scurrying to figure it out from the full gamut. I mean,
that was huge.
It was huge, and you saw it. And mind you, going virtual is not new. It was just needed. So if we go back to the adage, stay ready so you don't have to get ready, this was that time when that showed itself to be true. And so now we're looking at things like telemedicine. People are having doctor's appointments and their therapy online now. You're looking at e-learning for students. You know, we are now teaching people through a screen. We're having, you know, like even in medicine, we talk about virtual waiting rooms where you pull up to your doctor's office and now you're in your car versus the waiting room. And so now what does that space look like? So you have these new opportunities in the virtual space. This doesn't mean that you're limited. And as creatives and marketers, we need to think, how can we be more progressive and thinking of what this new normal looks like? Because I don't think that's going to go away, one, because it is efficient for some.
Yes.
You know, and so we need to start transitioning a lot of the ways we used to do things, a lot of the resources that we used to create that were more print-based that now need to live digitally. We need to find a way to engage very authentically and with a human foundation, because now we don't have that physical interaction. But at the same time, similar to what we're doing today, I mean, like, I think around April or May, I was already over like emails and phone calls. And there was even a point in quarantine where I'm like, I got to see people's faces. I mean, even some of my friends were like, we have to get on video. It's not the same, because people still long to see faces and have that human interaction. But we know that we have to do it in a virtual world now and moving forward. So I think the biggest opportunity is to start thinking, how can you make your brand still relevant, still engaging in a digital setting? And it can happen. I think that's where we're moving, and that again is agreeing speed to be a vital participant and marketing, and really any industry you're in from now on and moving forward. That's the biggest opportunity.
I love it. I love it. And just from a fitness perspective, and, you know, I really dove into fitness from a marketing perspective. I want to specialize in fitness marketing. And what you talk about is what we've seen across the entire marketing industry for all clients is that the people who were already digital, they won. I mean, all they saw was their digital stuff skyrocket, while the people who didn't have digital saw everything go down before it could go up. And so, you know, it's extremely important that people take digital serious. And I think it's not just from a marketing perspective, but from a servicing, from a communication, from just the way you create your business model and the way you strategically shape your brand as a whole. So with that said, I mean, we're on Instagram right now, and we know that social media is one of the greatest tools as it pertains to branding, which I believe to be the organic portion of social media, and marketing, which is the paid side of social media. And so how do you feel about the impact that social media organically can have for small businesses and entrepreneurs? Do you think that it's important and that people need to be consistent on social media, or do you think that they should go into paid, or both?
So listen, let's be honest. If you're a small business, there's a lot of opportunity for you to leverage social media without busting your budget. You have a really great platform to showcase your work, showcase who you are, and engage very, very real with people without having this huge $1 million budget to go underneath it. So I definitely encourage people to leverage these types of platforms. And again, now is the time to do it because we don't have a choice. We're on. We're looking for engaging moments.
Right.
We're looking for ways to converse in a socially safe way. And so social media definitely allows us to do that. You talked about consistency. Consistency is king. Regardless of what you're doing, you have a small window to hook people. You need to be clear about what your consistency looks like. So if that's once a week, be clear about that. Like, right. I will meet you here once a week. If it's every other month, right. Be clear about that. I will meet you every other month. But then you need to meet there every other month, every other week, every day. Don't jump into something and say every day because you're really, really excited and you got some new workout gear and you got three hot playlists and you got to get on there and do something. Right. Be honest about what you can be with consistency, because when you're not, you lose people. We know that with television shows. Like, you'll find a show that you love, and then you'll say, like, when does it come back on? And then it's like 3 years now, you're like, I've been found 2 other shows to watch. I don't even know what happened in the last 2. So you want to make sure that you're consistent and you're upfront. Like, hey, this is going to be a season that comes out every other whatever, or ever so often, once a quarter. So people just know when they can expect content from you, and they don't feel like you've abandoned them because it's been clearly communicated, and they feel like, I know when to come back so I can get more. And then also, like, be consistent in the resources that you have. So maybe you're not able to really have this visual or video, but you may have a website where people can continuously get information, or a blog that can serve in your stead of a video engagement piece. So you definitely want to make sure that you're doing that on social media as well. And then make sure you have relevant content, right? I'm a big person as far as it goes about not reinventing the wheel. Like, if it exists out there, you don't have to keep coming out with the same content. Look for ways to be different. Look for ways to bring a new perspective, a new view on what you're doing, because otherwise you're going to get lost in the shuffle. So if you are in fitness, let's say it's training. So maybe you want to be the trainer that's like, I want to focus on moms, or I want to focus on ways for young people who are now at home to still get that physical interaction that you don't get by walking in the hall. Be creative, and then find a specific target segment where you can truly speak to them. So you're not just one in a million. You want to be a standout brand that's consistent, and that's where you can really maximize your space, your social presence on these social media platforms.
Perfect. And I think one thing that you mentioned that I'll just kind of throw something in. I mean, it's your quote, but when you decide what type of content to post, kind of goes back to make sure that you're not trying to consume from, but you're rather trying to contribute to. And so I'm huge on, whatever your content is, provide a bunch of value for people. I mean, you'd be audacious to think that you could give too much information organically through social media. People are seeing hundreds and thousands of posts each week. And so I would just challenge people to be consistent and make sure that you're providing as much value to people that are watching. You mentioned something earlier about going virtual and it being efficient for some. And I agree with that, but I think it's extremely efficient for consumers. I mean, the ability to do things online at their fingertips now. And one resource that I just want to mention, because we talked about it a little bit, is that people really need to take serious their CRM, their customer relationship management tool, that really does make things easy for not only your consumers' interaction, but even for your business. I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs, like you said, 1-person team, 3-person team, writing that same welcome email, going in, changing the name on an email that they had last week, putting in the new name. And the CRM does all of that. It accepts payment. It does all those things. So I want people to understand that going digital is not hard, that there are resources, affordable resources that can really bridge those gaps.
Yes.
So, all right. I wanted to give us enough time to really dive into social injustice. There's obviously plenty of data points we could pull from to say that this is extremely important. I don't know if it's the one from this week or last week or the week before that we should talk about, or none of them in particular. but we know that social injustice is really at the forefront of a lot of the marketing discussion right now.
Correct.
How has social injustice shifted any marketing plans that you've seen, or, you know, how are you now having to talk about social injustice or consider social injustice in the marketing strategies you know, pitch to your clients?
Sure. So I'm going to jump back about, I don't know, 10 minutes ago
Okay.
when I was talking about the adage of if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
There
And
you
I
go.
think what we have seen, I mean, it's so loaded,
I know
Xavier,
it. I
because
know it.
the reality is this is not a new concept. Now, this is one time in maybe this generation where we've seen agencies and people and brands have to stop and recognize it.
Yes.
But the reality is, back kind of similarly to how we were talking about going virtual, and we saw that, like, if you were already in the virtual space, you were winning, and if you had to, you know, hurry up and try to get there, you lost out. That's the same with being relevant in this time of social injustice. So I'm going to be completely honest and say, as we move forward and begin to build in strategies, this is a time where there's grace, right? We did expect for some people to have been a little bit more prepared for what happened. And it goes back to that brand trust conversation that we were having a little bit earlier. For brands who really valued their consumers who were Black or brown or whatever that particular community that's being targeted at the time, when they're truly sought after, looked after, and incorporated into strategies and thought, and they do feel seen, then when things occur that happen in our world, in our communities, that aren't shown in the brightest light, they're already seen as authentic partners with the consumer, with the community, with that segment.
Yep.
If you look like you just scrummaged up a little disclaimer at the top of your webpage that says we support Black Lives Matter, and then you just go about your regular business, we see into that. So basically, like, check the box, and now you still need to give you my dollar. And I don't think so.
Right.
So, you know, right now in this season, we are at a space where people are like, I am paying attention now more than ever who I give my hard-earned money to, who I give my hard-earned time to. I need to know that you care about me and what matters to me. I need to know that we share values. So if you can't authentically show that to me, then I'm not really interested in engaging with your brand and engaging with your business. But what does you being a part of the conversation look like? What does it mean to authentically show up? So yeah, we're putting a lot more scrutiny on, it's more than a Black or brown person in your ad. We want to see, what do your employees look like? What does your C-suite look like? And not your new one that just came about last week, but what has it looked like?
Right.
And then is there a plan? So yeah, if I do go on your website and I see that little, you know, straight Black page with white font that says, we here at fill in blank support Black Lives Matter and feel that we stand in solidarity, blah, blah, blah. So fine, but then where's the tab that leads me into your full-blown plan of how you're going to, who are you partnering with? Here's how we've made changes in our staff. Here's what we're doing in our community. Here's the projected plan for the next 5 to 10 years. If you don't have that, and yes, we're doing the research. So if somebody's asking, like, are you even clicking? Oh, we do all day. I do. And I know I have a lot of other peers and colleagues that are like, yeah, I'm clicking beyond that. What's really going on? I need to understand that it's a part of your core. So at the end of the day, when I'm looking at how I want to engage with you, I need to see that it's truly baked into the very fabric. So much so that when you look at Procter & Gamble and you look at Nike and some of the ads they put out, they're not making products.
Absolutely.
They're showing ways through actions, through, and again, and not new. They're not new to this. That's also a saving grace. McDonald's. These are brands that have had stakes in the ground of this is where we stand. So when things, unfortunate situations that aren't new, but maybe new to some, like George Floyd, they didn't have to scurry and figure out, oh my gosh, how do we show that we care?
That's right.
These brands were like, we've been caring, this is not new,
Right.
and we're continue to stand in support. We don't have to go recreate a new web landing page to support that because it already existed on our page. We don't have to create ads really quick to show what we're doing in the community. We've been part of the community for decades. So that truly matters. That is so important, and that's where brand trust thrives. Because now you're not trying to figure it out. You were ready, and you continue to be ready, and therefore I want to engage with you. I know that you'll value the time that I bring to you. I know that you'll value my resources coming to you because you're a partner with me and my community. So social injustice obviously has especially now, it's a big part of the conversation. But if you were one of the many who just decided to participate, I really hope you don't look at this as a checkbox opportunity, because you will lose out. The people, your targeted segment, your consumers, the very people that you're going after, are so smart. So I implore you to take off your work hat, your practitioner hat, and be a consumer, and know that we see through little, like, check it out, check this off to say it's done. We're doing the research now.
100%.
Very much so. I mean, we will drive right past your establishment to go to the business who've just been in the community and been helping out. We will X out of your webpage because we're so tired of those disclaimers, like exhausted. We want to know what is the work and the action that you're putting behind what you're saying. And that, even more so than the product that you offer, can help me make a decision whether to engage with you or not.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And one thing that I think is extremely important for brands and even entrepreneurs is that they put some type of accountability check in place. You know, like, here's what we're going to do, and then show me that you did it. I think there's a lot of people who, like you mentioned, that are just now joining the conversation, that are promising some things to the community. You know, we're going to donate $5 million to the community in the next 3 years. And I'm like, bet, where's that webpage at? Like, who is that? Who did you support? What are the restaurants that you said you're supporting?
What community? Like, I know we're talking generally about community, but we want bullet points.
Yeah,
like,
where is it?
This community, in this place, this organization, with the partners, here's our, and we want employees that don't, while we're appreciative of the employees that you have in the DE&I space, we still want people to be in the C-suite. We still want people have leadership positions, not just the targeted marketing branded person, the DE&I person. Like, we want to be seen. We are here, and don't exclude us from the narrative, because we will exclude ourselves from patronizing your business.
So let's talk about that for a second. And I'm going to throw this in here because it's a random note. But I had called you one time about social injustice and some initiatives that people were working on. And I was telling you, well, I think we owe white people the opportunity to catch up, you know, like to get their understanding, to learn. And you immediately had the reaction of, first of all, we don't owe them anything. We can grant them the time that they need, but we don't owe them anything. And so I think that was important. And so when I say that, because when we come into buildings and we're the D&I person, which is diversity and inclusion, for those of you that aren't familiar with the acronym, there's times when we're in that room and we're like, all right, here's the black slide, and they step aside, and that's our moment to have any say. And then when we're finished with the black slide, we sit back down and the whites have the rest of their conversation. How do you feel about inserting African Americans, and why it's important for us to start to be just part of the normal conversation? It's not leverage your black person for black stuff and then they can go sit down, because I know even in our interactions and the way that we had to play, I mean, it was almost like they lean on us to understand the African American, and that's it. And it was almost, you had the aura of, if you said anything that pertained to the general consumer market, it's like, whoa, that was kind of smart for a black guy. And you're like, but I'm just overall smart. I'm not for anything. I'm just smart. You know, so how important is it that African Americans just be part of the general consumer conversation, and why is that so important to the strategies that come out of it?
So there was a phenomenal article, and I'm gonna have to get it to you to maybe post later about a lot of people in the advertising industry who are really tired of these urbanism terms and ways that were put into ads. And frankly, they were like, that's got to stop. I think one thing that we can do as marketing and communications practitioners is make sure that we're inserting ourselves beyond just the multicultural or ethnic conversation. Because you might have to be the one responsible for painting the picture. So if we go back to the beginning of our conversation, and we talked about how when you lead with ethnic insights and say that even if the percentage of this particular community is small in number, they're responsible for the majority of the trends for the general market. You need to paint that picture with your strategy. So don't, even as an African American employee, when you're going before clients or you're going before your whoever, don't exclude yourself from the conversation by putting yourself in a box that's like, hi, I'm just here to give the Black insight or the brown insight or the little multicultural insight, because you're going to get, you will only be heard through that same small lens. You have to present yourself as, I'm here to talk about your entire business, and here's a vital part of your entire business, and it's being influenced by this particular consumer who may be 13%, but they're responsible for 83 of the trends and the believability of what you're trying to promote or sell. So when you talk to them as far as showing that you are not a small piece of their business, you are their business, then they will hear you like that. I think we need to, and I mean, I say that like it's not a thing, but you and I both know that
Absolutely.
we have to, I mean, we would sometimes be like, hey, you got 30 minutes to present this, but then we have to challenge ourselves and say, hey, how can we be a part? I mean, we had a lot of great colleagues that we were like, hey, we need to be inserting this insight throughout the entire presentation, not from 3 o'clock to 3:15 when everybody's tired.
Yeah, on our agenda line after lunch.
Correct. So we need to be going back to the data and analytics conversation. Make sure that you have because people do care. Once you start talking their language, and we talked about how data and analytics talks their language, it helps them see what you need them to understand through their world, whether it's numbers, emotional, stats, whatever. Start putting those on the forefront. Start making sure that you're leading with that, and make sure that you insert these insights throughout the entire strategy, not a piece of a strategy. You're not going to show like, here's our plan, and then here's what we're going to do for the Hispanic consumer and the African American consumer and the Asian Pacific Islander consumer. No, like, here's the plan that's inclusive of this diverse body. Right. And if you omit any part of this strategy, you will fail. Right. So you have to be inclusive of the diverse, very, very diverse consumer and this diverse strategy that I'm offering you, because all of that is tied into how we're going to have a winning outcome.
I love it.
Point blank.
I love it.
And if you got to step out of the strategy, like if you are the only one in the room, which we know happens, you still got to come with that same ambition and that same fierceness to say like, no, let me pause here. This is where, I mean, sometimes you got to do it from the sideline. Like, hey, I know we're talking about this. I can also say that, you know, Newton said that 93%, I mean, interject in there. So, because, you know, if you have the ability to be in the room where it happens, so to speak, if you have the ability to do that, then make sure you're using your voice. Don't be a wasted voice.
I love it. I love it. And so Instagram is going to tell us we have to stop talking in 7 minutes, but I'm going to call you right after this because we're going to keep talking. But I think that there's 2 things that I'm going to talk about last, and we'll have to talk about them briefly, but I'm going to have you back on in September. So we'll get even further. But I think that, and that was also on social injustice and why having African Americans in the room, the C-suite and in the decision-making room is so important. I would also challenge that African Americans don't represent other ethnicities enough in their content either. And so I think that we have to look at ourselves too. And I have a lot of small business clients that say, man, I really wish that I could tap into other demographics. Well, I haven't seen any of those other demographics in any of your other videos. So I don't know that they relate to you. And so I think that as much as we talk about, you know, their other businesses' ability to insert us into their content, that we need to be mindful of how to insert them into our content as well. And that's just doing business. That's just business talk. That's not
Sure.
race talk, just business talk. So how do you agree with that? How do you feel about that? You know,
So let me just say this, and I know we might be running short on time, but I wanted to just say something that I think is really important to me, but it's also a charge to everyone at this metaphoric table and at the literal one as well when decisions are being made. Mm-hmm. And that is, we need to understand that diversity and inclusion, which I don't want those words to be so cliche that we forget their meaning, but to make sure that you have that at the table does not mean let me scooch over so more people can fit. Mm-hmm. If there's already perspective, or even 2 or 3 at the table, that's all that's needed. And I say that because I don't want people to think like, let me scooch over so you can fit. If you're overrepresented, give your seat up, and you don't have to be at the table. And that's a hard pill to swallow, and it's unpopular opinion. But in order to be more progressive, I think we need to have that mindset. We need to make sure that we allow all voices a seat, not scoot over so we can have 50 different voices going everywhere, but to say, you know what, I'm already represented. Let me give you my seat. I don't need to be here. You can have my seat because I'm represented already. And until you can get past that uncomfortableness of feeling like, well, I have to be here. I have to be here. No, you don't. Not if you really want a true outcome that benefits us all. There's still some form of privilege to say, I'll just scoot over. When you can denounce that or even leverage it more, to be honest, if you have that privilege, to even leverage your privilege in a more positive way, give up your seat. You're represented. And so it's not going to feel good for you personally, but we will all, it puts a halo over our entire team, our entire brand, our objective, and our outcome. If you learn that it's not always about scooching over. Sometimes it's saying, I'm represented, someone else can have my seat.
Ooh, man, that's a bar right there. That's a gem, because that giving up the seat and not just scooting over because you still want to say your piece. It's like, for the greater good of the entire strategy and for what's best for the whole, get out of the way. Like, you have to give up your seat.
And don't be afraid.
I love it.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to say, hey, I don't see this person represented. I don't see this culture or ethnicity represented. I don't see this age group represented. You know, you have to, don't be afraid to identify that and say, I'm willing to give my seat up to have that. So I think we need to all, this is the time, again, there's grace. We are in a learning season to say what was comfortable, we're all stretching out of that to get to a better, more winning outcome that works for us all, that makes us shine brighter holistically. And that's going to cost some form of sacrifice, but it pays out in the end. That can be unpacked a little bit more, which I would love to, but for the sake of time, I won't. But I leave with people. I want that to be left with people in their head. Identify. You can speak up and identify and say, who's not here? That's why I need to get here. And then say, my voice is represented. My perspective is represented. I'll go ahead and get up.
And it's not always just race. When you look around and you're like, who's not here? It's not always race. Like you mentioned, it could be age, it could be gender, it could be race, it could be a bunch of different things depending on the seat that you're sitting in and the brand that you're representing. It could be a body type and fitness. You know, there's a lot of different things.
For sure.
So Instagram is giving me a 2-minute warning. With these last 2 minutes, I want you to give me what piece of advice would you give to everybody out there hustling to earn generational wealth?
I would say listen to the people who have gone before us. Be humble in that aspect. We don't know it all. I think sometimes we think because we have all this new insight and we know these new buzzwords of what's currently going on that we forget. We still have to take some of what worked from the people that went before us. So be humble, be open to coaching, and be open to mentoring, because once you truly understand where we came from with the skill set that you have of all that's new, coupled with the learning of what worked and didn't work and the best way to approach it from people who've gone before us, that is a winning formula for everyone. So stay humble, stay coachable, stay teachable, and always remain a student of the business.
Love it. Love it. The best thing I ever did was be open to your mentorship. So I really, really appreciate you joining. Really appreciate all of the insights you gave. We're going to get back on here again. I appreciate it. We'll be back on in
Absolutely.
September for sure, because we have more to talk about, and you have so much more value to give just by being who you are. I see your guy in here too, Will, man, and it's just awesome to see
Shout
him
out to
grow up
my,
too.
my
So
brother who is one
absolutely,
and is in on the conversation. It's so
love
important
it,
to listen.
love it, love it, love it. Well, we got 30 seconds, and so with that, Allison, I love you, and everybody watching, love y'all.
Love you too. Bye.